Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm talking about Mummy 2017. Specifically, I'm talking about the character Jenny Halsey and how she's actually depicted in this film. This video has major spoilers for The Mummy 2017. This video has major spoilers for Wonder Woman 2017. Just be aware of that. So I'm just going to go through real quick, give you the lay of the land with the characters. So this movie had Nick Morton, who was an artifact thief, played by Tom Cruise. It had the Mummy, who was actually had Aminette, who was the Mummy, who was played excellently by Sophia Boutella. And then it also has Sergeant Vale, who is the sidekick, played by Jake Johnson, excuse me. And then last, it had Jenny Halsey, who is an archaeologist, played by Annabelle Wallace. Okay. Now, so I'm picking up on this is a 0 out of 5 movie, and the reason why was specifically how Jenny Halsey and how Aminette were treated. The two female primary characters were treated in the films. So I'm picking up here with essentially Jenny Halsey is brought in to identify Nick Morton's body. All right, so the archaeologist is brought in to identify the artifact thief's dead body, right? And what happens is Nick Morton is alive. He should be dead, but he's alive. And so the two of them go out to have drinks together and talk about it. Well, Nick Morton wanders off because he's having visions of Sergeant Vale, who's dead. He's having visions of Aminette, who's dead. And Aminette has essentially, she has set her mark on him, and she did this when she was really still in the cave, or in the cave where her sarcophagus was found, and she is essentially marking him to be the vessel of Set, the Egyptian god of death, who she made an Aminette. She made a deal with Set to take. So what she got was a magical power right out of the gate, and the deal was she would kill her she would kill her father, her father's wife, and her half brother, and then she would become queen, right? And this all happened in Egypt in the past, of course, and then she would also kill a human male, and then Set would put himself into that human male, but she had to kill the human male with this specific dagger that had this specific stone on the dagger. Okay, so that's the plot, and actually I think that's fine. I actually liked the story. I thought the story was really good. My whole objection to this film was the treatment of Jenny Halsey and Aminette, and I have a whole list of issues with how they treated Aminette. I'm going to get to them. All right, so here's the issue, right? So we're moving this sword forward, and Jenny Halsey at this point, so Nick Morton wanders off, and he's having like visions, right? And he wanders into the street. Now at this point, Jenny Halsey, so my issue with how the movie treats Jenny Halsey is you could just slap a big old label on her of damsel. She is really treated like the damsel in this movie, the damsel in distress, which is an archetype that is no longer available to be applied to a woman. It's just not, you can't apply it to a woman in modern films. There's just too many films that have taken really distinct steps to show that a movie can be massively successful without using this old trope, right? And the culture, by and large, has said this trope is not, it's not useful, and it's damaging to society and culture. This should be off the table, and I am so shocked to see this trope in this film. It doesn't make any sense that it would be here. Okay, so at this point, Halsey. This is one of the few times in the film where Halsey saves Nick Morton, right? So Jenny comes out and she saves Nick. He's wandered into the street. So she just puts out her hand, goes into traffic, and pulls him out of the street, right? Now, it's not that epic. It's like, if a Boy Scout did it, he would have got his merit badge. Like, it's just, pulling somebody who's wandered into the street out of the street. It'd be like what anyone who, that's all it is, right? Okay, so that you've dealt with that issue, right? And at this point, the movie continues forward. So at this point, they go to investigate where Amanette is, right? And so Nick and Jenny go to investigate and find Amanette, right? Well, they find her at this old church, and when they go in, the two of them are separated, right? And they're separated because there are ghouls here, right? And so Amanette has the power to. So the way Amanette works is she actually sucks the life out of police, anybody living, and that restores. And at this point in the film, she is like a desiccated, like mummy skeleton, right? She doesn't have any flesh on her bones or anything. She's really kind of disgusting. She's like an animal, like almost not an animal, but she's like a corpse. She looks like a corpse, right? Well, the way she kills people is she grabs them and then she essentially kisses them and sucks their life out of them, and then just casts their body off like a husk. Just, say, okay, I'm done with you, and just casts the body off like a husk, okay? And at that point, she has all their essence and all their vigor, right? So, at this point, Nick and Jenny find Amanette at this old church, right? So, they get separated, and Nick gets captured by Amanette and her 4 ghouls. And they have him on a church altar, on an old church altar. He's spread out, right? Amanette jumps on top of him with the dagger. All the ghouls hold him down, and she's going to stab him with this dagger, right? Now, actually, she does stab him with the dagger, and it doesn't work. And the reason why is the stone is missing. Well, we already know where the stone is. The stone is buried underneath London, and they found it when they were doing the Channel Project, okay? So she's going to need to get that, and she can't kill Nick with this dagger until she gets the stone, right? She's trying to do a ritual, right? So at this point, Amanette is on top of him, and, now she can just choke him out. She can have her ghouls bite him to death, claw him to death, right? But at that very moment where Amanette's like, okay, the dagger didn't work, I got to figure this out, in walks Jenny, right? Now, this was one of the worst damsel scenes in the entire film, all right? Now, here's Nick. He is on the table. He has no weapons. He is held down by 4 ghouls, and he has the main villain on top of him with a dagger, right? And on top of him, in a position where she can really do major damage to him, right? And so at that point, Jenny walks in, right? And you're in a church, right? So, all right, so logically, Jenny walks in. She is completely free. She's not held by ghouls. She doesn't have a villain on top of her, right? She's not on an altar getting ready to be ritually murdered, right? So logically, Nick would say, help. Grab that candlestick holder and hit this mummy. Throw it at him, or help free me, right? He looks at her, and he said, and he is pinned down by four enemies, and he looks at her and he says, run. He shouts it. He's like, run. You're in danger. Now, he has no weapon and is pinned down by 5 enemies, 4 ghouls and the main villain. And she is completely free, has complete, freedom of motion, and can help him. And his words to her are run, and she does. I'm like, what? This is like, I was like, how? I had to I kind of pinched myself. I'm like, is this 2017 or is this 1986? Am I watching Cobra again? right? It's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe how bad it was, right? All right, so there's a bunch of action that occurs. He gets away, she gets away, they get into a vehicle. At this point, of course, Nick is driving, and Jenny is in the driver's seat, and so they drive away and try to escape from the church. Well, the ghouls jump out and they try to kill them in the vehicle, right? And so, to the film's point, I don't feel that this was 100% a damsel scene, but that both of them are being attacked, right? All right, so that's good, right? So then, at this point in the movie, we reach a point where Jenny and Nick are taken in by this monster hunting organization that is led by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, by Dr. Jekyll, who is also, of course, Mr. Hyde, and at this point, all right. So he has damseled her twice, and so far, Nick's relationship with Jenny has been completely stealing her map, stealing the sarcophagus, and then stealing the map, and then making her look foolish down in the tomb, and then damseling her at the, during the plane scene, damseling her again at the church, right? But okay, so maybe there's an excuse for the, I really don't think there is, but maybe this is what the studio executives were saying. They're like, well, it makes sense that she'd be a damsel in distress, and the reason why is she's just an archaeologist. She's just spent time in university. What do they know about fighting and doing super cool action stuff, right? Which, again, is just horrible and lame, but maybe that's what they were thinking, right? Well, no, at this point, we meet this group called, I think it's Prodigium. Yeah, so the group is called Prodigium, which is it's a warning about monsters. And these guys are people who fight, and we get taken through their catacomb, their cool catacomb headquarters, and we see the skull of a vampire, and we see, maybe parts of a werewolf, and now they show us, hey, here's the Dark Universe. You're going to get to see the creature from the Black Lagoon. You're going to get to see Dracula. You're going to get to see a werewolf, the Bride of Dracula. It's all going to be in here, right? So they start projecting, Jekyll and Hyde's in here, right? They start telling you about the Dark Universe through visually, which I think is great. It worked out, right? It was good. It was a solid scene. I like Prodigium. I like the concept, right? But now, Prodigium, Dr. Jekyll now unveils that all along, Jenny has been their agent. She's not an archaeologist. She is a trained monster hunter, right? She has been trained by a monster hunt, and at minimum, she has been trained by a monster hunting organization. Well, now you're like, what are you talking about? This woman is drug around like a damsel in distress throughout the entire film. You've shown that she's incapable of dodging or thinking for herself, or using good judgment. Like, what on earth? How can you now tell us that incapability? And so what you're really saying with the script then is saying, oh yeah, well, the reason she constantly needs to be saved has nothing to do with the story. It has everything to do with the construction of this movie. All right. Now, when you bring Tom Cruise into a film, you make him look cool, right? I have no problem with making Tom Cruise look cool, but you don't do that by by making the woman he's with seem incapable and foolish. That's just not. You cannot do that in a 2017 film. That's my issue. I was like, are you kidding me? You telling me she was trained by a monster hunting organization and she may be a trained monster hunter? It was shocking, right? So at this point, Amanette is tied up, right? And they spend some time, and now Nick gets locked in with Dr. Hyde, with Mr. Hyde, okay? Well, Jenny gets real upset, and she tries to save him. Now at this point, Nick is in a locked room with bulletproof glass, with Mr. Hyde. And so Jenny's freaking out and she's trying to save him, right? So she, like, literally just goes up and beats on the glass with her fists and kicks at the glass, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, take a chair, at least break a chair against it, or, you know, look around for something metal, you know, use a steel chair, or get a gun, or, you know, you're in a monster hunting headquarters. There's got to be weapons around, right? But instead, she uses the most ineffective, and sure enough, you know, like, Tom Cruise, Nick Morton, who's a regular human being at this point, defeats Mr. Hyde, Eddie Hyde, with nothing. Like, he doesn't have anything, right? And you're like, wait, how did he beat Mr. Hyde? Mr. Hyde has supernatural speed and agility. How on earth did this happen, right? And it does not make any sense. It's just so bad. And I was just like, wow, man. You know, so Tom Cruise saves himself, and we are given an ineffectual, we're shown that she is ineffectual at trying to save him, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. So at this point, right, the movie continues. So at this point, Aminette escapes from Prodigium's headquarters, right? And again, Nick Morton and Jenny Halsey, the artifact thief and the archaeologist, maybe monster hunter. Okay, all right. So they run, right? Well, Aminette, she calls forth the sands of Egypt, right? Now they're in London, right? That's Prodigium's headquarters is in London, right? So where's she going to get the sand of Egypt? Well, that was a pretty cool part of the film. She gets the sand of London from all the glass. She just turns all the glass in the city into sand and then uses it to do her bidding, right? Pretty cool, right? Yeah. And actually, we're going to get to Aminette, man, because, oh, man, she is, the way they treated her, I really feel it was even worse than Jenny, okay? So at this point, again, Jenny needs to be damseled, and they're being chased by a sandstorm, okay? So we have this scene where swept up by the sand is a double-decker bus. It gets flipped on its side, and Jenny and Nick are running like crazy, right? And so we see it coming, right? Here's the, this double-decker bus is getting pushed toward them. It's on its side, right? And, the front glass is broken out, but it's a big old bus. It's going to hit them. It's going to kill them, right? So Nick is like, oh, well, just doing his thing, right? He's like, I better save you. So he shoves her. They're both running like crazy, right? And so he shoves her hard, kicking her like 6 feet to the side, right? With his hands. I don't think he kicked her. Pushing her 6 feet to the side, out of the way of the bus. And then he just kind of, does his super action hero stuff and goes right through the open window and just, gets caught up in the seats of the bus, and he's fine, right? So you have two people. They're both running. They both see the bus. She's trained, she's a fit, adult human. It just doesn't make any sense why he's able to do things he's able to do, and she can do nothing except get shoved out of the way. It was just so aggravating, right? So he damsels her again, right? And then at this point, they keep running, and Nick gets back in the game, and he's struggling to find her, and the two of them go essentially get put into the water main underneath, the water main tunnels underneath London, and essentially they get put into this area where there's, they're underground, they're in these tunnels, and they're all, and this water kind of comes up, right? Now, I don't think they were in the sewer. The water looked way too clean to be the sewer, so that would have been kind of gross. But the water has come up, right? And so, so Nick and Jenny are there, and so you got this situation again where you're like, okay, what's going to happen? What do we do? Right? And, man. So, so this situation is happening, and of course, the mummy comes along and snatches down Jenny, and so Nick has to go save her because she can't just punch the mummy in the face or swim away, right? Now, again, Nick has no abilities, right? He's just a human being like her, right? She has all the same capabilities as him, right? It does not make any sense, right? So at this point, he goes to damsel her again, right? And this time he fails. And so she drowns to death, and then Nick ends up with Amanette in this one area, and that's it, right? Now, the next scene, this last scene, this is all Amanette, okay? And that I'm going to break out for a separate video. So here we go. So here's how Jenny Halsey, the archaeologist, perhaps monster hunter, at least trained by a monster hunting organization as an agent. So at least an agent of a monster hunting organization, if not a monster hunter, right? She's introduced with an embarrassing thing where Nick has stolen her map, which is her most important piece of information for her entire job. She's then shown up in her own place of work by him, right? She then is damseled, in the damseling it just starts right away. And it is, she is damseled in the airplane. She is damseled at the church. She is damseled for the sandstorm. She is damseled for in the deep water sections. She's treated like a damsel in distress repeatedly throughout the film, right? So it's just a drumbeat of insults on Jenny Halsey continuously. And it is just, all I can say is it's 2017. We should not be dealing with these kind of movies. And it is just so sad that this is where we're at right now, and especially sitting 1 week after Wonder Woman, where the map has been laid for how to do a strong female protagonist, a strong female action heroine. The road's been written. The path is there. And honestly, I think we had the path in Star Wars. We had the path in Force Awakens, which came out to be a $2 billion film, right? When Rey said, "Don't hold my hand," that was it. That was the clanging gong to the entire industry. The damsels in distress stories were done, right? So that is my 2-part, 40 minutes of content talking about how they got Jenny Halsey wrong, and were very unfair with how that character was treated. And so my next section is going to be talking about Amanette, because Amanette is complete, is the other female primary character, and she has her own unique set of terrible problems with how a female character should be treated in an action film, in an American blockbuster. And so we'll get there. Thank you very much. Take care.